The skeleton of an 18th century giant was removed from display after his body was snatched by a surgeon. Campaigners have welcomed the decision after 240 years to honor the man's expressed desire to not be placed on display. London's Hunterian Museum as a medical oddity. The poor man. You can imagine what he went through during his life, looking at it being displayed as an oddity. He didn't want his skeleton to be displayed like that. A dying man's wishes not to be dissected because of his unusual height and displayed as part of a collection were ignored hundreds of years ago, but now after much deliberation, the Irish giant skeleton has finally been removed from public display at the Hunterian Museum of Anatomical Specimens in central London, having stood at a colossal 7 feet and 7 inches tall, the result of a growth disorder now known as acromegalic gigantism. Charles Byrne was regarded as a curiosity in life. In death, his remains were acquired against his expressed wishes by the anatomist and surgeon John Hunter back in 1799. Hunter stripped Byrne's corpse down to its skeleton, mounted it, and placed it on display in his private Museum of Anatomical Oddities, which today is housed within the Royal College of Surgeons of England off of Lincoln's Inn Fields. The circumstances by which Hunter acquired Byrne's remains after his death were somewhat ubiquitous. Byrne, who was born in County Londonderry, made himself something of a celebrity, paying audiences in rooms at various sites across London from early 1782. He was a regular subject of the papers of the time. As the Morning Herald reported July 17, 1782, quote, "The wonderful Irish giant is the most extraordinary curiosity ever known or ever heard of in history, and the curious in all countries where he has been shown pronounce him to be the finest display of human nature they ever saw," end quote. At the age of 22, Mr. Byrne's health began to decline, not surprisingly given his condition, which can cut life expectancy by a decade. Following the loss of all of his money to a pickpocket, his health only deteriorated faster and he died in his lodging in June 1783. Prior to his death, Byrne had been approached by Hunter, who desired to dissect his corpse, a fate at the time reserved for executed criminals, and display the remains of his collection. Mr. Byrne declined, but feared this would not deter the surgeon. And accordingly, Byrne is known to have made arrangements that on his death, his body would be sealed in a lead coffin, transported to Margate, and loaded onto a ship for burial at sea, where he hoped his remains would rest undisturbed. However, the plan was thwarted and Byrne's express wishes ignored when Hunter paid £500, the equivalent of £60,000 in today's money, for the cadaver to be snatched en route to Margate. For more than 2 centuries, the Irish giant has been the showpiece of the Hunterian collection and the subject of various calls in recent years to either just remove the skeleton from display or fulfill Byrne's wishes to be buried at sea. That Mr. Byrne's remains have been withdrawn from public display was greeted as wonderful news by Aberdeen University law lecturer Dr. Thomas Munzer. However, he told AFP the move was only a partial success, as the man himself had wanted to be buried at sea, specifically to prevent anatomists from using him for study. Back in 2011, Dr. Munzer and Queen Mary University of London medical ethicist Len Doyle published a paper in the British Medical Journal calling for Mr. Byrne's final wishes to be respected. They wrote, "Byrne's remains ought to be buried at sea, or at least be withdrawn from public display." Their campaign was supported before his death and by the minister, the British writer Hilary Mantel, who penned a fictionalized portrait of Mr. Byrne titled "The Great O'Brien," which was published in 1998. And we have here the image of Queen Elizabeth II studying Charles Byrne's skeleton during a visit to the Hunterian Museum when she did that in 1962. Now, while the Royal College declined to end the exhibition after considering back in 2012, the Hunterian Museum officials have now announced that they have reconsidered the sensitivities of keeping and displaying Mr. Burns' skeleton, and as a result, the Irish giant will no longer appear on display when the museum reopens to the public. The museum spokesman told AFP that Hunter and his peers in the 18th and 19th centuries acquired many specimens in ways we would not consider ethical today. And later they added, the Hunterian Museum will begin to program to promote new research and explore issues around the display of human remains and the acquisition of specimens during the British colonial period. Museum officials said that Burns' remains will still be made available for bona fide medical research into gigantism, but critics, including Dr. Munzer, have noted that Burns' skeleton has already been extensively studied and his complete DNA extracted and sequenced, and thus question the merit of retaining the skeleton against Burns' wishes. Scientific understanding of the acromegalic gigantism, which still affects people today, remains limited. Notable modern individuals with the condition, including the actor Neil McCarthy of Zulu fame, and Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca in Star Wars, and Carol Stricken, the Dutch actor who played Lurch in the Addams Family film trilogy, the giant in Twin Peaks, and Mr. Hom Waxana Trio's silent valet in Star Trek The Next Generation. And this is on Express UK by Ian Randall. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.